people inside the mall towards the Boylston side started to panic and just ran out of the building. And we just waited until, we had security around it. Everybody started telling people to go back in. That's when we went back down to Boylston, grabbed security again, and said to them, make sure you keep people away from the barrel. And we grabbed the fencing and pulled it around the barrel, around the potential entrance.
Joe, thank you for sharing that story. Also, thank you for taking action at the time, important action to keep people away from that scene. I want to go now to another eyewitness near the scene, Rachel Sibley. Rachel, where were you when this happened, and what did you see?
We were on Boylston Street. We were about 50 feet from the finish line. We were walking towards actually the exact location where the explosions went off. We were headed there to cheer on a friend as she crossed the finish line. And all of a sudden, we just heard this huge bang. It sounded like a cannon. And, I looked around and you could see people looking up sort of like in the sky, like, oh, where are the fireworks, thinking it was sort of a celebratory bang. But we looked ahead and there was this giant cloud of gray smoke, and the whole crowd was still for a moment, and then the second bang went off, the second explosion went off, and it was just, it was terrifying. It was just, absolute chaos. People started, screaming and yelling to each other. They were trying to find, their other friends and family members, and, people just started running away from the finish line. And moments later, maybe like minutes later, we heard, sirens filling the streets and heading back towards the finish line. It was absolutely terrifying.
You were so close there, only 50 feet from the finish line. As you said, were you able to see any of the victims of this bomb, get a sense of the extent of the damage?
No, like I said, there was this giant cloud of gray smoke, and after and it was, completely blocking any view from the actual center of the explosion. I had been looking to the left of me on the street as marathoners went by, and so I turned and looked straight ahead and just saw this huge cloud of smoke. I could see a little debris, further in front of me on the ground, but, after that second explosion went off, we turned and just had to get right out of there. We didn't know at that point, was another one going to go off even closer to us? It was just, we were confused. We didn't know what was going on. We just knew at that point we needed to get out of there.
Well, Rachel, we thank you so much for calling in to us, letting us know what you saw, and we are struck by all of these reports from the eyewitnesses and how quickly people moved in to help, law enforcement moved in to help, and we heard earlier that between the two explosions, police had already moved in. So we're talking 10 to 15 seconds before they reacted and immediately deployed. I want to go to Martha Raddatz. Martha, you're hearing reports of still more evacuations ordered?
They just evacuated the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and I have to believe that is because they had an explosion at the Kennedy Library in the Kennedy name. They're clearing out that School of Government there. Everybody in the area is supposed to leave that school. I'm also hearing that the explosion at the Kennedy Library was small. Again, they told us no injuries, but that is an absolutely beautiful building. It is all glass front. It is in front of Boston Harbor, all glass, a huge American flag hanging down in the center of that library. And we're trying to get more details on exactly what happened there. Whether something was dropped in a trash can, we don't know, but certainly they believe it is related somehow to these marathon bombings as well.
And Martha, we heard the police commissioner say they don't know yet whether this explosion was related to the two explosions at the finish line. And we'll be getting some conflicting reports about what might have set it off at the JFK Library.
I'm getting the same thing too, George, but many believe it is probably related. And setting off a bomb like that, again, I have to hearken back to Iraq and how they set off explosive devices there. And that was often a radio-controlled device. If someone actually dropped something in a trash can, it could be a timer, or it could be radio-controlled, meaning that it was set off by a cell phone. It was set off. They have a number of ways to do that. but those were so closely timed, it was probably either on a timer or some sort of radio control device.
And again, we heard our own consultant Dick Clark, former counterterrorism czar, say that this would have been about the size of an IED in Iraq and Afghanistan.
It probably was. Again, it was a powerful blast, and people felt that, but it wasn't enormous. And those blasts in Afghanistan and Iraq that do so much damage look to me to be about the same size early on in the war. You could probably put them in a backpack and no one would really notice. They obviously got bigger and bigger as the war went on, but a very small device can do so much damage.
And we're following the breaking news developments at JFK Library. They've just tweeted, "Fire in the building is out. Appears to have started in mechanical room of new building. All staff and visitors accounted for."
Yeah, there are no injuries reported, and again, while some people think it's related, who knows, it may be some sort of electrical fire that anything today after that bombing at the Boston Marathon would be suspicious.
And Martha, going forward, officials taking absolutely nothing for granted. You see the helicopter over the scene right there. The Federal Aviation Administration has closed down the airspace above the finish line, above the bomb site in Boston. We've reported, as we said earlier, Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House is closed down as well. Major cities across the country taking security precautions now, and major public events set for this evening, and at other locations across, for example, across New York City, Mayor Bloomberg saying that they're going to put enhanced security measures in place right now.
I think you'll see that all across the country, exactly as you said, George and Diane. That is the safest thing they can possibly do at this point. They don't know who did this. They don't know why it happened. So they want to look out across the country. I mean, it's the same reason that they're evacuating the Kennedy Library, or the Kennedy School of Government. That was just a smart thing to do after some explosive device or something happened at the Kennedy Library, is to just associate those two names. You've also got the National Guard again. Apparently it was more than 400 Massachusetts National Guard. They're probably continuing to secure the area, continuing to look for any suspicious devices.
Yes, but it gives us a sense of how immeasurably